got something to tell you. This is not clickbait. I actually have probably one of mountain biking's biggest, dirtiest secrets, and I honestly don't stand to gain much by telling you this, but I'm gonna, because I think we can do something about it. So this doesn't involve anybody in particular, but the parties involved here are, in general, marketing managers at bike companies, journalists, YouTubers, and the homies. Now, I'm not going to have much B-roll that goes along with what I'm saying because I don't want to imply anything by it, and so we're going for a ride this morning and we'll play some of that. But really, this begins back at my parts bin to give you a frame of reference. So we're back at the shop where you've seen me restore and build countless bikes, and next to me is my parts bin, which is actually like 20 bins and a storage unit, and some of you guys are like, that's bullshit. How could that be a parts bin? Who has like an Eagle drivetrain laying around in their parts bin? And yes, we have partners in the industry. Sometimes we can call in a favor and get a part for a bike, but this really is my parts bin, and the crazy part is that this is nothing compared to other parts bins I've seen. There are countless garages and sheds and storage units around North America, Europe, Australia, completely loaded with parts that would blow your mind. And nobody's doing anything with the parts. They're not donating them, they're not selling them. It's complicated. How on earth could that be? Why not give them away? Why not sell them? And the reason is, they're not always their parts to give away or sell or donate. Let me run you through a scenario. So I'll start by saying that nobody's really at fault here. Nobody's doing anything nefarious. This is a system, if you want to call it that has developed organically over decades. And I'm gonna run you through a scenario with a protagonist we're gonna call the reviewer. The reviewer reviews bikes and parts, and so they're very valuable to companies that make said parts because they wanna get the word out about it, and whether the review is positive or negative, they need the publicity. They have to start somewhere, and so they send things to them. Now, you might think that all these bike magazines and YouTube channels have some stock room and this person that's keeping track of everything. It's usually the person who's physically writing the article whose garage the freaking bike or wheels or any of that stuff is in. There's sort of this unspoken rule that they're supposed to warehouse it until it goes to the next person. So in this scenario, the reviewer gets sent a bicycle, a trail bike, an expensive one. So they unbox it, they put it together, and then they ride it for a month and write a review on it. And then they send an email back to the marketing manager and they say, hey, I'm done reviewing the bike, send me an RMA and a shipping label so I can send it back to you. Now the marketing manager says, just hang tight, somebody else is gonna review it and you're gonna ship it to them. Okay, that's normal. We see that all the time, and so the bike sits there in their garage, and a few weeks later, they do get an RMA and they do get a shipping label, so it goes on to the next reviewer. Now, this keeps happening a number of times until it starts to slow down a little bit because next year's bikes are coming out, the season's over, and nobody really knows who the last person who's gonna get the bike is. It's kind of a game of hot potato. And so for these people, this is totally routine. It's normal to have a bunch of bikes sitting around waiting for shipping labels, and sometimes they don't come. So now all of a sudden, as the can gets kicked down the road, they have this bike sitting there in their garage for a year and a half. One night they wake up in a cold sweat thinking, I never got a response about that bike. And so they follow up, and nobody gets that email because that marketing manager already moved on to a job at a different bike company. So you're probably thinking if you were in that situation, you would keep following up and find somebody else at the company and really do your due diligence to get that bike back into the right hands. But in reality, this is routine. This is happening times 50 over the course of the year or more. And so it eventually just becomes a chore, and they end up just warehousing all these bikes and parts that nobody is even really keeping track of. And so that's how all these garages and sheds end up with these big piles of parts. And you would think that this stuff would start showing up on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, or that somebody would donate it someplace. But that's kind of weird. When you're doing that as a career, when you're the reviewer, the optics of setting up an eBay store under your name where you're selling a whole bunch of stuff that's like not technically yours. I mean, think about it. Nobody asked for it back. You tried to give it back, but now you're known as this guy that's selling all this stuff online or giving it away to people. And so where does it go? Well, sometimes it goes to the homies. And I'm not talking about just a friend, I'm talking about an insider. Somebody else in the industry who knows that we don't talk about this stuff like I'm doing right now. They know not to post about it on Instagram. Look at this set of wheels that so-and-so gave me. Because the last thing they want to be known as the person who gets all these parts to review and then gives them out to all their friends or sells them. And it's worth noting that there's like no reviewers that are sitting there rubbing their hands together like, I have all these bike parts. They would rather have the space in their garage. They already have a nice bike. They already have the nicest carbon rims on them, and they already have 2 other bikes just like that. Now this stuff is just a burden. Now, of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes there's good communication channels, everything's laid out. They send you a drivetrain and they don't expect it back. They know it's gonna get covered in dirt, they know it's gonna get thrashed. It's not worth it to send it back and forth, but it's still weird for it to show up on eBay. A lot of times people do sell stuff through proxies. In these mountain bike towns where there are tons of journalists and reviewers, there's that guy who just takes all the stuff and sells it on eBay under a different name and gives them some cash. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Why don't they just anything? There's an answer to all that. If it was as simple as why don't they just, then that's what everybody would be doing. Think about it. You go to a bike charity, right, with all these parts, and you say, here you go, I got these because nobody asked for them back, so now you guys can have them. They're gonna be like, no, we're good, come back with some parts that like you know are cool to give us. Now you would think that the marketing manager or the marketing department would really want this stuff back, but think about that. You work in the marketing department at a bike company, right? It's not your company, it's not your parts, it's the company's parts. Every time you want to send, let's say, a set of wheels to someone, you find the last person that had the wheels and you email them a shipping label. Eventually that product runs to the end of its life and they're in somebody's garage, you don't even remember who, so you're gonna find out who that was, email them a shipping label, they're gonna take the wheels off their bike, they're gonna rip the tires off, put them in a box. Now the box is gonna come to the office, right? It's your responsibility to unpack it, scrape like 18 layers of sealant off of it. Then what? You're gonna take pictures of it and put it on Facebook Marketplace for a fraction of its residual value? It's in nobody's best interest to do that. Do you know how expensive it is to ship a bike? They don't wanna do that. They don't wanna generate double the shipping labels. That could be thousands of dollars worth of shipping. It actually costs less to just forget about the bike. And so you can see how none of the parties involved are really doing anything nefarious. It's just a weird system. And so now that we're all talking about this and it is kind of out in the open, I'm gonna suggest a solution. The powers that be at these companies, they should authorize their marketing managers to send out some kind of an email blast to all their contacts. Say, dear reviewers, if you have been in possession of any of our inventory for more than a year and you still have it, please donate it. Feel free to donate it to some kind of a bike charity and tell them cheers for us. Because you know that most of this stuff is gonna sit around collecting cobwebs. And yes, you don't wanna just give it to random people who are gonna go shouting about it. You don't wanna create those types of incentives, I get that. But there are organizations that fix up bikes for kids in underserved communities. If every 2 years companies did that, they could create a world of difference. They wouldn't have to worry about the stuff showing up on eBay, and these reviewers could have their space back and not feel weird about all this stuff. And yes, there may need to be caveats about pre-production parts, but there's gotta be a solution to this. So this was kind of different. This was like story time, I guess. I hope you found it interesting. And if you have been enjoying these videos, please subscribe to Berm Peak Express, subscribe to Berm Peak. Thanks for riding with me today, and I'll see you next time. I gotta tell you something. I gotta be honest with you.